Yeah, basically the state will reimburse us for inspections. So. Borrowing money to pay for that. All in favor, or any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Gets us to the reduction for the probation.
It's just simply a reduction from that fund where we were paying that based on the additional appropriation. But Mindy, there is one thing I notated there that the numerics don't match. So if we could just confirm that my additional appropriation claim versus my reduction form, the numbers match. It says 22,816, at the top it says 22,819.
Yeah.
So,
I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Tom.
Second, Greg.
Any questions on this? There's numbers transposed that the auditor will take care of.
yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to reduce $22,819.40, right? Same amount as that.
The 16 is actually correct, 22,860.
It's the 16 that's correct?
The 16 is correct.
Thank you, Mindy.
You're welcome, sorry about that.
Good catch. Any questions on that, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Brings us to new business and resolutions that Rob spoke of earlier. We'll start with 2019-7.
So I've sent these around to the council to look at in advance of the meeting, and basically we did this one for IMPA in Waynetown back in May of 2016. And it's just a 10-year personal property tax abatement that we need to affirm basically annually. And we're just saying that we've reviewed their statement of benefits and found that they're in substantial compliance, and that they, because they're in compliance, then this abatement continues on basically. So that's resolution 2019-7. Then we have one. Can I get go to the next one?
Sure.
So the next one is 2019-8, which is the same for Nucor. We found that they should receive a 10-year personal property tax abatement back in April of 2016. This resolution would say that they're in compliance, substantial compliance for 2019, pay of 2020. And then lastly, resolution 2019-9 with regard to Steel Tech. They were granted a 10-year personal property tax abatement back in July of 2016. And we would resolve they're in substantial compliance with their statement of benefits for 2019, pay 2020. We just did have to do this annually.
I would entertain a motion for these three resolutions.
Make a motion to approve A, B, and C. Tom. Second, Mark.
Any questions or comments on this? I will say that used to, previous life as a councilman, we would go out and check with these companies that had abatements to make sure they were in compliance. But basically, you meet in office, they tell you the same thing that they send you a letter with. Send a letter to you stating the same thing, that they are in compliance. We have no way of going in and counting noses, so to speak. So, if there was any questions. All right, any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
We'll have those here for you to sign at the end of the meeting, as well as the 2019-10 earlier IMPA resolution.
I was going to say we might pass it on down to, well, I know Mark Smith wants to get back to planting beans.
We'll do that. Welcome down.
And he left his job, full-time job, to come in for a part-time job. Appreciate that, Mark. All right, is everybody here to present the Animal Welfare League budget? is this just a heads up for next year's budget, or?
I also don't know, Jennifer said that she was trying to get a hold of somebody at AWR to see who was coming in, she had not heard. So, you want me to hold on to these, we can.
Yeah, did everybody get a copy of those via email? And welcome, everybody. Well, we'll pass these out and be something we can discuss. At our next meeting. And we'll move on to the Herbs Committee recommendation on Brian Donaldson. I think the Herbs Committee met with him.
We met last week, about, he had a concern on the salary placement on it. We asked about the contract, so he was questioning, should he be with deputy prosecutor pay? That's recommended by the state. We didn't have any formal written thing that would do that, so we were just gonna keep him where he is on the ERP schedule. Although as we were looking, we found out he qualified for an increase because he's actually been serving for 18 months under the ERP, so actually he should be getting the 2%, and that should be retroactive to January on there. So I think we'll probably have to look at the line item on the salary that may, or salary line on that, because it could run out. But that's our recommendation unless there's a contract or some official statement saying he was supposed to be paid the same as the deputy prosecutor out there. But that's coming out of a different group and committee, but as we tried to find that answer, no one seems to be able to come up with anything. So we'd recommend next time, if that is the way it's supposed to be, that they let us know that and when we sign that, so we know which it should be. Otherwise, he'll continue on the herbs as our recommendation. That's pretty.
The commissioners never signed that contract.
Came out of the, we think out of the Public Defense Council with Daz and Diggs and Hadley and
That's probably stepping into it.
that's fine. You were sitting there with me.
Well, the next step is that either commissioners probably ought to look at a contract so he knows where he is, the county knows where they are. Or commissioners, I think that it should mirror the state, which we would know in July, like this year, and pay starting in January 20. So those things are kind of, at the very least, since there's no contract, no ironclad thing to do, it should at least follow the ERPS guidelines, which is a 2% increase a year, and he's in his second year, and he didn't get that, didn't receive that 2%.
Didn't get the increase.
So at the very least, that needs to be, that was our finding, whatever the council decides to do. Yeah.
Was there nothing in the judge's presentation when they made this? I mean, this all came from the judges, this whole public defender side and everything? Did
Yeah.
not have anything put in there?
He was to be paid at the same rate, at that time, he was to be paid at the same rate as the deputy prosecutor, which he was. But then there was nothing going forward, whether it should mirror that or there was nothing. And he, for some reason, it remained at that rate, which was, so he didn't get that 2%.
And what'd you say about the Public Defender Council?
They're the ones that's got some kind of a contract. Did you
Right.
see it?
I didn't see it.
There's some kind of a employment contract that they agreed to with him. I'm not,
Because they're the ones that's always presented to the council in the past, am I correct on that? Saying we need this many or that many?
well, this is all really
We
new.
don't want to go there because we know nothing more.
This is all brand new. I mean, this is the second year of this whole program. And the judges come to us and said, we need another prosecutor. Or-
I don't know, I'm not gonna, I think there's statute that regulates that position, right? From the Public Defender Council.
The council, Dan can correct me, I mean, they help set this up in shoes, and then they have agreements that they reach with the approval of the judges on the public defenders. But, you know, we created a whole different department here, and, I mean, yeah, we've not gotten a contract with Brian, and, I mean, I don't really know, honestly, if that would fall, I mean, I think at this stage it falls to the commissioners probably to have some agreement with them, but, I mean, but on the same note, they have in the past.
I don't think it has anything to do with commissioners. It's the Public Defender Council makes that decision based upon the state guidelines. You guys determine the compensation. Commissioners play, all we do is house them.
Well, the only reason why we wanted to involve the commissioners is because the IRF schedule said contract. For whatever reason, that's what, and I don't remember why, but it was only the first year pay, and from there on, it just said contract. And so it's kind of up in the air.
I mean, I don't want to get between the two legal people, but I can tell you from my time frame of 2005 when I came on council, we were always presented, and Terry, I mean, can speak to this too, we were always presented this information from the council, the Public Defender Council. I mean, here's how much money we need, here's how many counselors we need, the state requires this, the state requires that. Now, some of that had to do with the fact that when you get reimbursement, you know, because of it, some of it doesn't, but the dollars and cents always come from the Public Defender Council, what was asked for. It was one of them that was always kind of the touchy thing that you, how much do you interact and how much, you know, kind of like when we had welfare, they always come in and said, here it is. You might as well pass it if you really don't have any say so.
Right.
So, I mean, those are kind of the fun ones to deal with.
On the filming committee, if something comes up or we get the contractor the statement or legal, I mean, we visit it obviously, but we don't know any better, but at least we know at this point that he's deserving of the retroactive 2%.
I'll make a motion that Brian, the 2% retroactive, he's entitled to.
Don made a motion to go ahead and give Brian the retroactive money that we owe him for this year so far. Continue on. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Gary seconds. On the IRBS committee recommendation, that's what we need to do at this point. And then we'll check with the Public Defender Council and make sure they inform us of what they want. So maybe somebody, a representative from them should be at our next meeting. Clarify all that, so we're going into budget times. Yeah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
One thing, recommendation from the IRBS committee, maybe, I don't think we're under any obligation to mirror the deputy prosecutor. It's recommended, is what I understood. Like, you're the kind of the IRBS, Dan, you're kind of the IRBS attorney, if you would look into that before we have a review.
Just ready for the next item. I'm just coming around.
For the voting was there.
No, I had it. I'm here on behalf of the Redevelopment Commission, and they are required annually to make a determination as to whether they have plans to use all the money they capture in their TIF. And so I presented Rob with the resolution. They asked Jeff Peters to do an analysis of that for them, and he concluded that they were going to need all of their current income and their cash balance to pay their $15 million bond obligation. As you know, they're kind of the bank for people who want to do work in the community, and most of that debt is related to the sanitary sewer extension project being done right now on 32 and Newport Road. And so until the regional sewer district kind of gets up and running and has its own revenues, the RDC has funded those projects, and they're the number one right now. So that's what most of that debt is. The Redevelopment Commission has also worked on providing water out to that area, and they've issued a bond anticipation note to fund that. And again, so Mr. Peters recommended that they not allow any assessed valuation to be released to the other taxing units right now, given their obligations. And so they, in their meeting in May, they passed a resolution determining that they did not have any excess AV at this time. They have to review it every year. There are some guidelines where if they get too much cash balance, they have to spit it out to those other units, but we're not there. We have been pretty active, the regional sewer district pretty active the last 10 years. And so most of that money is spoken for. So they are required to report that to you and have you approve that by June 15th. So here they are, right on time, and they do this every year. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. And then Gary is your representative on the Redevelopment Commission, and if there's anything he wants to add or answer your questions, he can do that as well.
Well, yeah, what I'd like to add is, I've got no history with redevelopment corporations or commissions, but we are pretty proactive. Just my feel is that we've done a lot of work in the last 2 years, and all the things that are going on out here on the west side of Crawfordsville. We're working on a water agreement with American Water Company. It's not finalized. If we have to fund that totally, we have to fund the sewer project, which is coming down the pike, is mandated by the state that when we get to 70% of our capacity, that we have to have a plan to make that grow. And it looks like by the time all this is done, we're going to be there or exceed that 70% capacity. So we need plans. That's why the sewer board went ahead with their engineering, is to get that timeline worked out. So if we got to do all that, the way the revenue is, we're going to have to do some creative financing to pay it all. And from my vantage is, if you're doing creative financing to pay for it, which means you're doing creative financing or creative income revenue to pay the bill when the bank wants it, and that's a recipe for trouble. We're looking at the American Water Company taking over the water, which relieves us for the water bill, but we have a ban right now that says we're going to pay it off or do something with it in 5 years. So that revenue, although it looks like we got a lot of revenue at hand, like Dan said, it's pretty much earmarked and spoken for that, plus some if we have to pay all the bills. We get shed the water cost, and the sewer expansion isn't quite as bad as we anticipate, then, it's not going to be that way. But somebody had a crystal ball, but nobody said they could read it. So that's where we're at.
Any other questions for Dan or Gary?
Dan, with this resolution, what are you asking the board to do?
To approve that determination, and then that gets reported to the state of Indiana, that you're the watchdog, making sure that the Redevelopment Commission isn't hoarding millions of dollars and doing nothing, is really your role in that. And that's what happened in Carmel, is why we have these rules, is they had all this money and they weren't doing anything, and people started saying, well, couldn't the schools have some of that or whatever, and so they implemented this this is the second year we've had to do it, this new analysis that we have to provide to you as to whether we're actually active, as Gary said, which we've been the regional sewer district has been very active, and the Redevelopment Commission has been funding it, so they've been working together to really provide some development opportunities out there, and then that will just make that TIF grow. So it's one of those things where it's seed money, but I think in our situation, Mr. Peters determined that we didn't have any extra money. In fact, we didn't have very much extra money at all. And if this TIF ban comes around, then I think that'd free up like $2 million of money that could be used for other purposes. But right now, that ban is committed until we have this agreement with Indiana American Water.
Right. So I would look for a motion to approve Montgomery County Redevelopment Commission Resolution 2019-1. Everything that Damon has said.
So moved.
Gary?
Second.
Greg, second. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, Dave.
Here, can I ask a quick question? I apologize. On E, was that voted on? I missed that, I apologize.
E,
E, was
Yeah.
the recommendation accepted? Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
moves us to G, which is set the budget hearing and adoption meeting dates. It's been suggested by our auditor. I think she's mentioned this to the state, that that's probably when we'll do that. Is that right, Mindy?
Yeah.
Okay. Our regular council meetings in September and October. The September meeting would be the hearing, and then October is when we would adopt the budget for 2020. So I would hear a motion now to accept these dates, or make these dates the official dates for the budget hearing and adoption.
So moved,
Tom made the motion and Gary seconded it. Any questions or comments on that?
Yeah, we can adjust those. I mean, there's no day here, there's a month, no day, so our council meetings, but we can add to it or move it as we want to, right? From that point,
Right.
I mean,
It
it
would-
just says September council meeting.
Right. And right now, it's gonna happen at our regular council meeting. Although we did set those dates, that's not set in stone.
I mean, it can be changed if we need to, it's not.
Right. Yeah. And I guess, Rob's right. I mean, I was thinking this, our September meeting is what we have designated as an evening meeting. Do you want to go ahead and do an evening meeting in September for this? I mean, I think that's what we did last year. All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Looks like we have no old business. Comes to the staff and elected officials reports. Jim, do you have anything?
I just got a couple things. One, as you guys are well aware of, Cheryl Morphy's been working with the RDC and some of the economic development stuff in the county. Cheryl has started setting up appointments, and I've started attending with her and will whenever I can to meet with just the businesses in the unincorporated areas of the county that are currently here, just to sit down with them, to try to get to know a little more about them, see what might be going on with them. Are they got any ideas of expanding? Are they, getting ready to hire any, new employees or add? Is there any thought that, we hope we don't hear this, but is there anything that they're talking about, maybe looking for a new location or something? Just trying to get on top of everything before it's kind of stuff that comes out to us as a surprise. So we started that 2 weeks ago, and we'll continue with them, and just she's scheduling them as she can, and then anytime I can go with her, I will, obviously, and try to learn more about it too. But we did just start doing that. This is the first time we've ever done it, and we'll continue to move on through it. So you might hear that being talked about, or you might hear somebody at certain places saying that, we were out there. We started on a couple of Newport Road 2 weeks ago, and just keep working our way around and try to get in front of them and try to see what we can do to help them and keep them here and maybe progress even farther. Number two, as I think you're all aware of, the commissioners passed the ordinance as far as the county administrator 2 meetings ago. Obviously, we talked about this at your last meeting, the topic of the funding. We had discussed the Cume Bridge. I had Dan kind of email out to the other two about that. The discussion came up of some concern with that due to the fact of As John said, John and Jim and the highway people have been meeting with Jeff Peters on a regular basis and trying to get stuff budgeting for the next few years and stuff. The concern becomes the fact that working with Jeff and the inspections that's been going on, on the routine basis of, we're pushing things out already 4 years out that we know needs to be worked on now due to the fact of the funds that's available. That is set at 7.5 cents right now, but we also had it set at 0 for a couple of years, which kind of took a toll on us. I know that the 7 of you and the 3 of us all have the same goal in mind, and that's the, Gary mentioned a while ago, trying to get things back to like they were and like they need to be. Just the Castner Road Bridge alone, which is not even a replacement or a deck replacement of the Scour project, and that's $500,000 going to cost us this year. So I know we're talking a 0.5 cent, which maybe only affects $100,000, but when you're talking about the expenditures that's going out the way they do on the bridge stuff, it is a concern, and we're already pushed out 4 years from now. And that's not saying anything that might happen between now and then. A lot of that expense is expenditure out of the next 4 years is culverts. That some of that relies into some of that cost too. You all know the kind of culverts and projects we have with those over throughout this county, along all the bridges we have. So that's the concern of the commissioners. We think that infrastructure, road, bridges and stuff is definitely what we all agree needs to be, kept up and just a little bit leery about that money going away again after we've had it down for a couple of years. That's all I got.
Where are you at in that process? Where you at, you tabled out, I missed that part last month, but has it been to the IRBS committee to set a salary amount, or where are you at there?
No, we have not taken it to for a salary at this point.
We tabled it, needed to be revenue neutral, we recommended the Q Bridge to make it revenue neutral for 1 year. We wanted something in the ordinance that say that we would have, approved, council would approve it, and it would be subject to funding each year. That would be an annual thing. Because this position needs to be a benefit to the county, not just another position. It needs to be a benefit to the revenue stream, if you will, of the county. That'd be positive. And then third thing, under other, we wanted the council to be mentioned in the job description under other. Those are 3 things that we thought that we needed to go forward, and we waited. We haven't heard. I don't think we heard anything.
No.
Did you get anything?
Dan and I have been emailing, but I think it may be in his court now.
But yeah, that's where it's at. And in my mind, the reason the Q Bridge was a target, one, it's easy. Just face it, it is. It's easy. It's an easy target because there's a tax rate tied to it, and every dollar that goes into it can't go into general fund. It can't. Those dollars trade back and forth. The Q Bridge is 1.5 times what it was in 2014 now. And yes, it was 0 for 2 years. One, to help us get over the hump when we were upside down on the budget, and 17 didn't get it because of the state. There was a state change in regulation, how to file, and it got missed, and so it stayed at 0. So it took 2 years to get it back. So we're 1.5 times now for 2 years. And when we go to 7, we're still 2 cents over what we were in 2015. So it's still an increase over what we've been spending. And I've had conversations with Jeff, and he agrees 0.075 is not sustainable. At the current tax revenue, things going on in this county, that's not a sustainable rate that we can keep up with without doing something different than we're doing. So my thought was, if we reduced that $100,000 to offset, that's a clear offset, we're not spending it here, we're gonna spend it here. And if it doesn't work out, if it's not a position that, for lack of better words, pays for itself, then we do away with it. They don't go any further than 24 months. But at least we're not double dipping on the taxpayer for this project. That's my thought. And I'm not trying to, I ran on we need good roads and bridges. That's what government does. So I'm not trying to short the county bridge and road repair money because I think that's important. I think that when we get done with this, just like what you did today, we moved $400,000 out of one line and put it in another because it's in the wrong place. And I think an administrator that gets to work at this full-time, 5 days a week, will find those kinds of things and will have more funds to work with and utilize our money better. And I think that'll end up in a net gain.
I think there's a couple, three things, Gary, that you said there that kind of draws my attention. First of all, I don't think there's any of us three that'll tell you that we think 7.5 cents is sustainable. That was a catch-up rate that was set for the 2 years. I mean, I don't know, I keep looking at Terry because he's way back even farther than what I'm looking at, but since 2005, that rate is, you're looking more, we've always been at 3.5, 3.5, 4 cents. I mean, you know, the 7.5 came from the 2 years of zero to make catch up, so I don't think there's anybody that thinks that we can sustain that year after year after year. So I guess to clear that up, number two, I don't think that, at least with my understanding of the talk tonight, that the 400,000 was in the wrong place. The 400,000 is cash balance.
That's right.
It's the fact that we had to use enough stone this year that we ran out. So we took bituminous money for the last month to make up for having not got our additional appropriation in time. And all that 400,000 is going to do is carry us to the end of the year in stone and pay back the bituminous. So nothing in the wrong place there. And then number three, the email, after I brought Dan's glasses, I can read it, from Rob, says, Dan, thanks for the proposed job description ordinance. The changes look good with an exception, and that's the number 9 where it talks about the input, perform all duties, studies, investigations, analysis as requested by the commissioners with input from the council. The only other thing that was listed on there was at the very end. It says, please insert clear language that the position is subject to annual funding, which is what he just said. Other than that, we've had no feedback that it wasn't passed as you guys, you and I had sit down and talked about. So I don't know that there's really a whole lot other than language there to straighten out that, in that one area that there's a problem. And I don't see anything in that that's just not a matter of sitting down and typing it out.
But, you know, cutting from a budget that we